So I was rummaging around in the basement of Mama Danger's house, and I found a box full of trophies. And none of these trophies had any significance to them. They were all basically just participation trophies. So I have decided that I'm declaring from now on, Jeff Danger accepts no participation trophies. So this is a warning to the left. We will only accept first, second, or third place trophies. I posted on my YouTube channel a video of Bill Maher with Jim Jeffries, who's a leftist comedian. He's actually really funny, but seems like he might be losing a little bit of his audience. Piers Morgan was also on the panel, and it turned into somewhat of a debate between what should normally be a civil conversation between devout leftists. You could even say people that flirt with communist ideologies. I'll play the clip for you.
Could I ask this one last question? The people who said during the campaign that Hillary Clinton was the lesser of two evils, could we get the apology right now?
Yeah. Why?
Why? As if, are you serious?
I'm serious, yeah.
Like Hillary Clinton would have a cabinet with Betsy DeVos and fucking Rick Perry?
She wouldn't have a Muslim ban.
They wouldn't have a Muslim ban. They wouldn't be feuding with everybody in the world. They wouldn't be doing this shit with Russia. Are you crazy?
Calm down, Bill. There is no Muslim ban. If there was,
fuck off.
Sorry, why did we
Fuck off.
Okay.
It's a fucking Muslim ban.
Okay. This is the point. This isn't
ban.
talk about the hysteria. I'm talking about 85% of the world's Muslims are allowed into
This
the
is what you
country.
do, Pierce. You say, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that, he's not going to do all these things. Give him a fucking chance, mate.
And
You know what I mean?
Why not?
Hitler didn't kill the Jews on the first day. He worked up to it.
Mate.
All right.
See,
I have to stop you all.
that is the exact ridiculous, hysterical,
Not
over-the-top nonsense
If
that
people
is,
got
I'm afraid,
hysterical in
making
Germany
people like you
right away,
ridiculous.
then it wouldn't have...
He's not the new Hitler.
You just like that you won The Apprentice and you have a famous friend, mate. That's all you fucking like.
Can I say one thing?
I know
That's all you like.
That's
all you
You're
like.
losing your audience. You know
I'm not
why?
losing my
because
audience.
you're sounding unpleasant,
Am I
and you're
losing
also
it?
not basing...
Can I say this might be the
You
worst
see, they're right
thing.
with me.
This might be the worst thing that could happen, and you all haven't even...
Bill Maher does not mind decrying Donald Trump for having a supposed Muslim ban, even though he's supposed to be one of the rational forces on the left. He tends to speak the truth about Islam, whether it be increases in rape, whether he's talking about the Cologne rapes in Europe, whether it be genital mutilation, the execution of women who have been raped, the execution of women who have adultery, the execution of gay people by throwing them off buildings, the spread of a violent ideology known as Wahhabism, which comes out of Saudi Arabia, which also funded the Clinton initiative. The hatred for Donald Trump is so great that all he has to do is inconvenience 300 people from Muslim countries, and he's already on the wrong side of the Muslim issue as far as Bill Maher is concerned. So I think Bill Maher is so stuck in this liberal loop that he can't get out of. I mean, what does Bill Maher want us to do with regard to Islam? I mean, he has no problem decrying it. He has no problem saying that it's like the worst thing ever, since communism and fascism. But Donald Trump tries to make a little bit of ground on this issue, and he criticizes him for it. So what does Bill Maher want us to do? And Piers Morgan, of all people, turns out to be the rational mind in this panel, which I never thought I could see happen. Jim Jeffries, fresh off of a coke binge, probably, goes straight to Hitler, which if you go straight to Hitler, you are not arguing anymore. You just look like an idiot. I mean, you go straight to Hitler, it's like, you can call anybody Hitler. I mean, you can call Donald Trump Hitler, who built buildings in New York City and was a politician until last year. Then you can call anybody Hitler. It's ridiculous. They like to compare Donald Trump to Hitler because he had a popular base of support, which every successful politician has. You know, Trump had rallies, Hitler had rallies. There was no marching in straight lines, though, in Donald Trump's, just so you guys know. Now, I was brainstorming a little with my chief of marketing, Alex Danger, and we were talking about kind of our hypothesis regarding what liberalism is and why it's so baffling. So I think that liberalism is almost the opposite of rationality. Like, if you want to just look at hard data, hard facts, and just actually think through an issue, that would make you a conservative. But if you want to think like with your kind of weird emotions or whatever, then that would make you a leftist, and you don't actually have to answer to any of the consequences of your actions. You have good feelings. You're a good person because, for instance, you want everyone to have a house. Not to mention that the consequence is people that can't afford to own a home, own them. You don't even think about that. Or if you're from a poor country, you should be allowed to into a Western country. Not to mention that your culture is completely fucked. You've got ideas about the world that really, really, really clash with Western ideas. You know, Mad Dog Mattis said it right when he said that, now I'm paraphrasing, that they, meaning Islamists in Afghanistan, don't want girls to go to school. They don't want girls to become educated. They don't want girls to have basic civil rights. They believe things that haven't changed in 1,000 years, when the whole Western world has changed exponentially since the West had medieval kind of ideas like child marriages, where adults marry children, ridiculous kind of crazy things that they used to do back then, during the Middle Ages. The Islamists are still living in that world. Now, I think Justin Trudeau is a great example of liberalism flying in the face of any kind of a rational thought. Now, when Justin Trudeau was an MP, Trudeau took issue with calling honor killings barbaric, which is basically killing a woman because she's been raped or because she's committed adultery or something of that nature. So I'm looking at the Toronto Sun's website, and the story reads, Liberal MP Justin Trudeau, now this is from a while ago, 2011, Liberal MP Justin Trudeau said the government should not call honor killings barbaric in a study guide for would-be Canadian citizens. On Monday, the federal government updated its Discover Canada Guide, a pamphlet given to new immigrants to help explain life in Canada and prepare them for the citizenship test. Among other things, it tells new Canadians that gay marriage is okay and forced marriages are not. But the guide also says, Canada's openness and generosity do not extend to barbaric cultural practices that tolerate spousal abuse, honor killings, female genital mutilations, forced marriage, or other gender-based violence. So, a rational Westerner, a normal person, whatever you want to call it, would say, honor killings, genital mutilation, forced marriage, gender-based violence, those are barbaric practices. Trudeau blasted conservatives for using the term barbaric, which has been in the guide since 2009. Trudeau said, "There's nothing that the word barbaric achieves that the words absolutely unacceptable would not achieve." We accept that Trudeau is saying, we accept that these acts are absolutely unacceptable. That's not the debate. In casual conversation, I'd even use the word barbaric to describe female circumcision, for example. But in an official Government of Canada publication, there needs to be a little bit of an attempt at responsible neutrality. So in Western society, if we can't even agree that throwing a gay person off a building is barbaric, or genital mutilation is barbaric, then how can we have any kind of a moral authority in anything that we do? So if you're Trudeau's standpoint, multiculturalism gives each culture an equal weight. So if one culture says genital mutilation, forced marriage, yada yada, and the other says that's bad, they both get an equal weight. For me, I think that's ridiculous, and this is the man that is leading the great utopia to the north, Canada. So, liberal irrationality is a scourge on people's lives everywhere it is practiced. If you look at some of the third worldy, this was when I was brainstorming with Alex Danger, he made the point that if you look at all of the, not to offend any location, but there are some cities that have like third world pockets in them, like Baltimore. If you go to Baltimore, it's like, there's Federal Hill, there's the Inner Harbor, Fells Point, Canton. There's some areas where there's a little bit of money, but if you go outside of those areas, there's like abandoned house, abandoned house, abandoned house, abandoned house, maybe a house where somebody lives in it, just whole areas that are desolate. And these are areas that elect liberal politicians every single time, and often it's like the same people. Same thing happened in Detroit. They just don't run their cities with any kind of rational thought. They promise things they can't afford. You don't look at a budget. You look at what you're giving to people. I mean, if you've been through some of these areas in Western Baltimore, it's like dangerous. And the same thing is happening in California. So I have before me one of my favorite publications, which is not really a conservative publication. They're owned by the Dow Jones, which owns Wall Street Journal. It has a little bit sometimes of a leftist tinge, but they do allow a lot of conservatives to write editorials, and a lot of rational thought goes on in these publications. So a very interesting article is written by a Thomas Dolan in Barron's, which is like an investment paper. It's called California Drying and Drowning in Fantasyland. So a fact of life in California for ever since, well, for a very long time, there's been a lot of drought and there's been a lot of floods. So in a flood drought cycle, you might think that maybe over time there's enough water to keep the state going. But there is a tendency in California, led by such groups as the Sierra Club, that oppose new water storage projects and blame everything on climate change. So if you have a solution to a problem, if you were a rational thinking person, you would work towards that solution. But if you support the Sierra Club and you oppose any kind of dam building, any infrastructure projects that might somehow affect the trout population or whatever special interest there may be, you'll just put up with droughts and floods. So California politicians refuse to build any new dams or any new infrastructure that would help store water for future use. Because if you're having issues with flooding, you need more reservoir systems, like dams. Groups like the Sierra Club will not allow dams to be built because they interfere with trout populations. And so what you have is a cycle of floods, droughts, mudslides, human carnage, like you're seeing with the Orville Lake Dam, which last weekend was at 100% capacity. Now, the Orville Lake Dam was originally designed to be part of a larger system. There was supposed to be a dam built upstream in Marysville, which would collect water on a tributary of the Feathered River. And that would reduce the amount that the Orville Dam had. So California officials allowed the dam to stay there without building the other dam or making any kind of improvements to the infrastructure or the spillway. So now you have, because of liberal irrationality, a half-assed project that was never completed that forced 180,000 people out of their homes. And inadequate reservoirs and flooding and infrastructure failing like the Orville Dam and the Orville Dam spillway, they all work to further the argument that the world is spiraling out of control as a result of climate change. If you see floods and catastrophe and death, it goes to further the argument that climate change is destroying the earth and making it inhabitable. And radical environmental groups like the Sierra Club have an incredible amount of power in California, which has been run by leftists basically since the 80s. Now, in a bizarre series of events, you guys might have heard about the alleged killing of Kim Jong-nam by his brother, Kim Jong Un. Kim Jong-nam was attacked by a lady named Siti Aisyah, a 25-year-old Indonesian woman who said she believed she was performing for a YouTube video. Apparently she was some kind of a YouTube prankster. Now, just to let you all know, I hate that whole pranking thing. I just think it's terrible. Like if someone wakes up and they have a chainsaw inches from your face while you're sleeping. I mean, if you're like some Americans, you've got like a 38 under your pillow and you might get blown away. Like, pranks are like way too dangerous in the United States. Just don't do it. Every third person has a loaded firearm on their hip. Like, just don't do it. Now, Mr. Kim did not stand a chance. I mean, he was this, I'm sure she was some unassuming woman, came up to him and put some toxin on his face and basically murdered the guy. Now, she's saying that she basically thought it was a prank video and that's all. There's actually video of Mr. Kim getting murdered out there. It was on YouTube, but I didn't watch it. I don't like to watch that kind of stuff. So if someone comes up to you and asks you to like do something unusual on video, just don't do it. Just say no. All right, so I did a quick YouTube search, and there's like a dozen pranks gone wrong. There's a Chinese student who was pretending he was in some kind of a life and death scenario with firearms. He gets shot by a Chinese police officer. Just don't do it, guys. Prank videos are awful. They're just terrible. Now, just breaking today, Milo Yiannopoulos was dropped from CPAC because of his statements that he made with regards to a abuse that he suffered when he was around 13 years old. His statements were he kind of sounded like it was almost like a positive experience for him, but I think he may be like, I don't want to be like, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I think he's rationalizing a little bit, and he's trying to like make himself not a victim or something. But anyways, he's getting in some trouble over it, and we'll see how it plays out. But CPAC just dropped him, and he's kind of a rising star within the conservative movement. Here's what he said, because it's actually kind of hard to find online, and the result is he's being dropped from CPAC, and Jake Tapper went after him on Twitter. So here's the comments.
This arbitrary and oppressive idea of consent, which totally destroys, the understanding that many of us have the complexities and subtleties and complicated nature of many relationships. People are messy and complex, and actually, in a homosexual world, particularly, some of those relationships between younger boys and older men, the sort of coming of age relationships, the relationships in which those older men help those young boys to discover who they are and give them security and safety and provide them with love.
So, the first part of that video, I think, was taken from another video he did about something totally different when he talks about consent. Then the second part, and it's spliced together to make it like it's the same stream of thought. And these are older videos, which were kind of created ahead of the CPAC event, which Trump will be at. So yeah, the first part was about consent. That was something from another video. And then the rest was something from a podcast called The Drunken Peasants. He was on there, I think, for 2 hours and 50 minutes. I did not watch that whole thing. I have the comments from the Drunken Peasants, and you can see that they're a little different from what the video purports to be the comments. So here they are.
He gave me some homework on you, Milo. He gave me a few
on this this sort of child abuse stuff, and to the point where we're heavily policing even relationships between consenting adults, sort of grad students and professors at universities.
Well, actually, Milo, I have a video on consent if you want to watch that.
Well, let's address a little more of this.
I think I'm okay.
I was in my teens. 14. I was in my teens. Something like that.
But I do have to wonder, if Milo is okay with
It's this
adults
guy.
getting their cocks sucked by
Is that his
14-year-olds,
name?
what would happen if a 14-year-old
Yes.
wanted to?
Yeah, look at him. Holy shit.
Is that me without my glasses on? Hold on.
It does look like Paul. It's British Paul.
It's British Paul in
Can we
there.
put some aviators on him? Can we put some aviators and a hooker in his hand? Can we see what he looks like?
Someone can do that. Audience, make that for Milo.
The whole consent thing for me is once it's not this black and white thing that people try and paint it. There are some 13-year-olds out there capable of giving informed consent to have sex with an adult? Probably. But I was also a 13-year-old. I hung around with 13-year-old guys, when I was 13, and there were some of them that still thought girls were fucking icky at 13. Like, not many, but like they were just coming out of that phase. I don't know that I was ready at 13 to get fucked in the ass by a 28-year-old black drag queen, is what I'm saying. So you can't. The reason these age of consent laws exist is because we have to set some kind of a barometer here. We've got to pick an age and go, okay, look, this is the age where we can reasonably be assured you're an adult, you can give informed consent, you understand the risks and pregnancy risks, and I think
the law is probably about right. That's probably roughly the right age. I think it's probably about okay. But there are certainly people who are capable of giving consent at a younger age. I certainly consider myself to be one of them. People who are sexually active younger. I think it particularly happens in the gay world, by the way. And in many cases, actually, those relationships with older men. This is one of the reasons I hate the left. This sort of stupid, one size fits all policing of culture. This arbitrary,
Milo.
This arbitrary.
Let him talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll be quick. This arbitrary and oppressive idea of consent, which totally destroys, the understanding that many of us have the complexities and subtleties and complicated nature of many relationships. People are messy and complex, and actually in the homosexual world particularly, some of those relationships between younger boys and older men, the sort of coming of age relationships, the relationships in which those older men help those young boys to discover who they are and give them security and safety and provide them with love and a reliable and sort of a rock where they can't speak to their parents. Some of those relationships are some of the most
molestation to me. It sounds
Yeah, well,
like
you know what?
It
You know
sounds
what?
like
I'm
Catholic
grateful.
priest molestation to me.
And you know what? I'm grateful for Father Michael. I wouldn't give nearly such good head if it wasn't for him.
Oh my
look,
god! Oh my god! I can't handle it.
It's funny because
What is wrong with you,
Ben
Ben?
gave me some homework on you, Milo. He gave me a few videos to watch to brush up on my Miloisms. And one of the things that you said in one of these clips was that transgenderism is the new, frontier of rights. My wording is bad here, but it's the new frontier of social progress. And the next thing in line is going to be pedophilia. And yet here you are talking about how, look, some of these kids that get diddled by these priests, I mean, it's a good thing for them. They're getting this love. Now they are also getting
You're misunderstanding what pedophilia means. Pedophilia is not a sexual attraction to somebody 13 years old who is sexually mature. Pedophilia is attraction to children who have not reached puberty. Pedophilia is attraction to people who don't have functioning sex organs yet, who have not gone through puberty, who are too young to be able to understand the way their body. That is not what we're talking about.
And Coulter?
Sure,
so
granted.
you don't understand what pedophilia is if you think that I'm defending it, because I'm certainly
No.
not.
I'm not saying you're defending it. I'm saying you're walking the borderline. You're
That's
walking,
not what you said. You said I was defending it.
Okay,
and you were
okay,
wrong.
fine. I retract my statement, Milo. I retract my statement. I shan't slander you further, but you are advocating for cross-generational relationships here. Can we be honest about that?
Yeah, I don't mind admitting that, and I think particularly in the gay world and outside the Catholic Church, if that's where some of you want to go with this, I think in the gay world, some of the most important, enriching, and incredibly, life-affirming, important, shaping relationships, very often between younger boys and older men, can be hugely positive experiences for those young boys. They can even save those young boys from desolation, from
they're
suicide,
consensual.
drug addiction.
Hold on.
All sorts of things, provided they're consensual.
So I would direct you guys to Milo's Facebook account. He just uploaded a video. It's about 10 minutes long, and he kind of just describes what he meant by those comments. He was talking about, when he said young boys, he was talking about like younger guys, like I don't really know what age, but that's what he said. But anyways, I'll let him defend it because, but I don't want to play the full 10 minutes. Or maybe I will. Here's the full 10 minutes.
Hey guys, it's Milo here. I have a horrible, I don't know what it is, the flu, I think, so sorry if I sound like I do. You've probably seen by now reports and videos that allege that I'm some kind of apologist for pedophilia or some kind of enabler of child abuse. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I find those crimes to be absolutely disgusting. I find those people to be disgusting. And I think that my reporting on this speaks for itself. I've exposed 3 pedophiles in my career. One of them, Nicholas Nyberg, who was a anti-Gamergate activist who supported white nationalism and described himself as a pedophile. Another was Luc Bozier, a London entrepreneur, former business partner of Louise Manch, who was caught asking for underage material online. And a third one, Chris Layden, is a London photographer who I exposed and who is about to start a rape trial as a result of my reporting. I've also, on many occasions, blisteringly criticized the left for its constant excuse-making over pedophilia. In particular, Salon, which publishes Todd Nickerson, a so-called virtuous pedophile, a guy who thinks that he's okay because although he's attracted to children, he doesn't actually do anything. I think my record speaks for itself, and the portions that were edited out of the videos that you've seen show, for instance, me saying that I agree with the current age of consent, that I support, I support the current age of consent, that it's, quote, about right, end quote. I think that people can put two and two together and work out why this video is coming out now. There's stuff that's been on the internet for a really long time. I think people can understand, you know, obviously there's frustration from some bits of the Republican establishment, but I don't want to blame anyone, because I said the things that you've seen, and some of them were very stupidly worded. Some of the wording that I used was dumb. And if I could go back, in most cases, you guys know, if I say something outrageous or offensive, in most cases my only regret is I didn't piss off more people. But in this case, if I could do it again, I wouldn't phrase things the same way, because it's led to confusions. For instance, I was told that one of the numbers that people are fixating on is 13, and the implication that I was advocating for sex between 13-year-olds. Well, the video that came out was edited to include a section where I said that consent was arbitrary and oppressive, but that was from a discussion about affirmative consent on college campuses. That was placed next to a section about 13-year-olds to make it look like I was saying that consent for 13-year-olds was arbitrary and oppressive, and that's not the case. When I spoke about relationships between older men and younger men, I used the word boys, and I shouldn't have done that. Gay people do say like boy and girl to mean people of consenting adults very often. Sometimes it's usually like the passive partner gets to, is the boy. But I understand that straight people wouldn't necessarily know that. And so, that I wouldn't do again. All I would reiterate is, you guys know that I can make edgy jokes. You guys know that I can sometimes push the boundaries of acceptable humor. This is one of those cases in which I should have phrased things differently. And these videos from a year ago and a year and a half ago, and I really just had no idea I was going to end up being this famous. Late, boozy, long live streams. I phrased things poorly, and I enabled my detractors and critics to assemble material that looked very damning, but which does not reflect my opinions. So for that, I'm sorry, because I know that a lot of you are out there defending me and wondering how to do that, because the material does look so unpleasant and distasteful. Another thing that looks unpleasant and distasteful about it is the tone in which I'm talking. I would just say this. This is something of which I was a victim. It's something that I lived through. It's something that happened to me. It didn't ruin my life. And the reason it didn't ruin my life is I had laughter and I had humor, and I was able to turn it into a joke, and I was able to brush it off and make jokes, make what are obviously jokes, like getting head from a priest kind of jokes. You guys know that. I understand that a lot of 60-year-old journalists wouldn't, and would be very horrified by the tone, by the sort of apparently flippant tone that I was using. Again, speaking about this subject, I don't think anything should be off limits for humor, but I do regret some of the word choices. I have been uninvited from CPAC, which I'm disappointed with. The statement from CPAC said that there was a video in which I defended pedophilia. That simply isn't true. I didn't. It was not my intention, and it wasn't what the words that I used meant. What I did do, and I stand by, because it's perfectly true, is say that in many, sorry, I have really bad flu, is say that in many gay relationships, well, for many young gay men, the first relationship they really have, the first long relationship they have, is with an older guy who perhaps takes care of them financially, takes care of them emotionally, and very often that can be a release. It can be an escape from an abusive or a uncaring or a difficult household. And if they're having problems at home with their mum and dad, very often kids of 17 will have relationships, for instance, with people of 29 years old. And that's what happened to me, and that's exactly the ages. I was 17 and he was 29. And it was a relationship that ended up lasting a decade. And that's where I was coming from, speaking about my own personal experiences of this stuff, saying that, of course this stuff happens and it's disgusting and I abhor it. Of course, any reasonable person would. It's revolting. And I can only say again, I find nothing but disgust, as my reporting record shows, for people who support and stick up for and make excuses for pedophiles. That is not what I intended to do in these conversations. And speaking from my own personal experience, all I was seeking to convey was that I had had a relationship, and I had an experience as a 17-year-old with a 29-year-old guy that turned into a 10-year relationship. I mean, my first real proper boyfriend was the guy I ended up being with for 10 years. I'm not with him anymore, but that's a sizable relationship, and not the sort of abusive caricature of, older man kind of abusing, and disposing of a younger boy. So I wanted to make some of that stuff clear. I'm going to attempt to reach out to some TV studios to get my point of view across, because it's very frustrating having the media repeat these allegations. It's very frustrating having so many people just blindly repeat things because they don't take the time to sort of see the nuance in the videos, or to appreciate that some of the one video, there was a unedited one, and I have to stand by my words, and I wouldn't phrase those things the same way twice maybe, but the first video that came out was edited very deceptively. First of all, to imply that I was an anti-Semite, because I was on with Dave Rubin, and I was talking about how Jewish people are overrepresented in media and banking. And I used the pronoun we to indicate that I was Jewish. My mother is Jewish, but I was raised Catholic. And when I did that, I then went into a little sort of semi-comedy routine saying, the Jews run the banks, the Jews run the media, like imitating the sort of person who would say that. That's the section they used, and they cut the section with the pronoun our or we. So it wasn't clear to anyone who didn't already know that I was Jewish and I was talking about my own people. And also, the point I was making in there, by the way, is that simply pointing out fact, simply pointing out that we are overrepresented in media and banking is not an anti-Semitic statement. Anyway, some of the same thing went on with the rest of the videos. To anyone who was upset by this, and anyone who has had their faith in me dented by this, I'm sorry. It's frustrating that CPAC has decided to yank my speaking slot, because I won't get a chance to defend this on and put it to rest, because I really want to I want to move on with my life and get this situation cleared up. So that's frustrating, but I understand why they had to do it. I do have some appearances that are going to be coming up over the next couple of days on TV, and one live one where I hope to be able to explain more fully, for those who want more granular detail, exactly what I meant by various remarks, and to make completely clear to those people who have pre-ordered my book, who are looking forward to reading Dangerous, which is going to be one of the big books of the decade, to people who enjoy my journalism, people who come to my college shows, to people who are people who are just Facebook Milo fans, that I in no way at any time condoned or intended to condone, it's not my meaning at all, child abuse, child sex abuse, and indeed, as a reminder, my entire journalistic career has been evidence of the opposite. I have outed 3 pedophiles myself in my own reporting, which is 3 more than most of my critics. And by the way, I was one of the first people to talk about Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile was a British entertainer, worked for the BBC. Everyone in media sort of knew that there was something not quite right about him. And when he died, I was maybe the first British journalist to ask whether some of the scandals were going to come out now, whether people were going to start being honest about what Jimmy Savile was up to. I was one of the first. So take that into account. I've done 4 really substantial, significant, gestures in my reporting career. And I hope that, with all of the expense and legal time and reporting time that it takes to report, for instance, on, the Gamergate feminist who turned out to be someone who had identified himself as a white nationalist and himself as a pedophile. The amount of time it takes to report and all that stuff, to check your facts, to get it through legal, the amount of resources I had to call on from my bosses. This is real stuff. Takes time, takes effort, and that is a pretty strange way to proceed if you are somebody who turns a blind eye to pedophilia. So thanks for listening, and I hope that's cleared it up for you. I'll be back soon. All right, thanks guys.
So there you have it, Milo defending what he was purported to have said and what he did say, both things, because apparently they are different. I'll just say again, like, he was a victim of abuse. So perhaps some of what he was saying had to do with him looking at things humorously instead of just, crying on Oprah's couch or whatever. But it was pretty weird what he said. I'll let you guys decide for yourself. I want to thank you guys for listening to Jeffrey Danger Radio. If you'd like to send me an emails, it's jeffreydangerradio@gmail.com. I also have a YouTube account. It's Jeffrey Danger Radio. You can check out some of my other podcasts on that as well. So thank you guys for listening. I'll see you in 2 weeks.